Last season got really weird for the Philadelphia Eagles. For the first half of 2023, they looked like they were going to be en route to making it back to the Super Bowl. Then they start 10-1, and everything just completely falls apart for them. And the big reason for Philadelphia's second half collapse last year was due to the bad hires that Nick Sirianni made when it came to his offensive coordinator and his defensive coordinator. He lost Shane Steichen, he lost Jonathan Gannon to head coaching jobs, and we saw how big of an impact they had in Philadelphia's success in 2022 because the guys they brought in and Brian Johnson at OC, he didn't work out. And then your defensive coordinator was so bad that you end up replacing him with Matt Patricia. And Matt Patricia, at the helm at DC, allowed Drew Lock to engineer a 92-yard game-winning touchdown drive on Monday Night Football. So it was time for Nick Sirianni this offseason with his job on the line to get back to the drawing board. And what did he do? He brings in Kellen Morris's OC and Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator. Vic Fangio is one of the most well-respected defensive minds over the last decade in the NFL. He definitely should majorly improve this defense. Their second biggest problem last season, outside of their bad coordinator hires, was their secondary. Their secondary was absolutely atrocious, and that was evident by what we saw Drew Lock do to them, or not Drew Lock, but Drew Lock, and then Baker Mayfield exposed his secondary also in the wild card round loss. So how did you improve the secondary outside of hiring Vic Fangio? Well, you drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, two of the top cornerbacks from this past year's NFL draft. Quinyon Mitchell is an absolute stud. Cooper DeJean is going to bring a lot of versatility. He can play outside corner. He can play inside the slot. He's a really good tackler. Then you bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson in free agency. And you still have a very talented defensive line with a good blend of veterans and youth. Jalen Carter is one of my favorite players in the NFL. The first half of last season, he looked like he was the runaway candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and then his play kind of dwindled a little bit. We kind of stopped hearing his name called as much. He didn't have as big of an impact in the second half of last year as he did in the first half, but going into his second season, I expect him to be in the running for a Defensive Player of the Year. He's good enough to be one of those interior defensive tackles that could give you double-digit sacks. You still do have a few good veterans there who still can produce for you. You got Jordan Davis, who I think could also have a really big year for Philadelphia as long as he can have his conditioning intact. There's a lot of reasons to be convinced that Philadelphia's defense is going to be really good this year. Offensively, we already know that Philadelphia, from a talent standpoint, has one of the best offenses in the NFL. You got a really good offensive line. Yes, Jason Kelce going into retirement definitely does hurt you, but Cam Jurgens has been the man in place for a few years now to replace Jason Kelce. They have a lot of confidence that he's going to continue to give them high-level play from the center position. You got Saquon Barkley, who you take from the New York Giants and free agency now, and you add that with Devonta Smith, Buff Batman, and A.J. Brown. The question is, can Jalen Hurts bounce back? This is going to determine how good Philadelphia is going to be this year and how far they're going to go this season. Jalen Hurts in 2022 under Shane Steichen, he was an MVP candidate. He looked like a top 5 quarterback in the game. He got paid a lot of money following that season in the offseason. And last year, he looked like a shell of himself. Can he get back to the Jalen Hurts that we saw in 2022? I definitely believe that is possible. He's a hard worker, high character guy, first one in, last guy out. I think he was a little banged up the second half of last season as well. And even though Jalen Hurts had some bad performances, let's not forget that he had some really good games during the first half of the season. I look at Jalen Hurts and I still believe that he's a top 10 quarterback. I've seen some people say that he's mid. He's not even a top 15 quarterback. I think that's a lot of baloney. All right, Jalen Hurts is one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in the game. He's a pretty accurate quarterback. He makes normally really good decisions with the football. But last year, with how bad the play calling was, and the injuries that he was battling against, I just thought that there were a lot of factors that overall hindered Jalen Hurts' performance. But this season, though, I expect him to bounce back along with the rest of this Philadelphia Eagles team. To me, Philadelphia is in prime position to get back to the Super Bowl. The NFC East is not that good. You, without a doubt, are a way better team than the Dallas Cowboys, who not only lost Dan Quinn to the Washington Commanders as their head coach, but a lot of their depth that they had, that they relied upon when they had all those injuries last year, they walked out the door with him and followed him to Washington. Then you look at the New York Giants, those are going to be guaranteed wins the 2 times you play them, and you possibly split with the Dallas Cowboys, and I could see you mopping the floor with the Commanders because you're just a way better team than them. Nick Sirianni gets a lot of flack because people say, well, what the hell does he do as a head coach if he doesn't really help with the offense or the defense? He just hires guys to do it. Listen, I think Nick Sirianni is a really good rah-rah guy. The players seem to like him, and I like him, man. I love a head coach who jots with the fans. You got Big Don, who should be back on the sideline with them this year. Big Don not being there definitely kind of had a negative impact on Nick Sirianni. You definitely could tell it. It was a really weird situation, but hopefully with Big Don back on his side, that can help Nick Sirianni get back into what it takes to be a good coach. I don't think he's one of those coaches that doesn't do anything, because you can't be a good head coach and not know just a little bit of football. And you also got to be a head coach who your players respond to. You can't be a bad coach if your team makes it to a Super Bowl. It doesn't matter how many good hires you make on your coaching staff. At the end of the day, when you're the head coach, you're the head man. There's a lot of decisions that you have to make. You got to have good judgment when it comes to when to call timeouts, when to go for it on 4th down, when to use the tush push, when to punt it. I think Nick Sirianni is a solid head coach. Is he one of the best in the league? No, but I definitely think that he's top 15, and he definitely is overhated. Every single year outside of last year, Philadelphia has gotten better under Nick Sirianni since he's been their head coach. Okay, is he under a lot of pressure coming into this year? You're damn right he is. But can he deliver? Yes, because you got Kellen Moore, who, is he a top 5 coordinator in the game? No, but he definitely is one of the better OCs. You know that with him calling the plays, that your offense is going to be no worse than middle of the pack. And everywhere that Kellen Moore has been prior to last season, he's had really good offenses, really explosive passing attacks. And I think with Jalen Hurts being under Kellen Moore's tutelage, he should be in for a bounce-back season. I think Philadelphia's defense is going to be drastically improved under Vic Fangio. He left Miami not because he was bad, because he definitely didn't improve that defense. They were like a mid-20s defense prior to Vic Fangio arriving, and he took that defense to top 12 in the league despite the injuries that the Dolphins dealt with on the defensive line, losing Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb to injuries. Vic Fangio, he played a significant part in helping Philadelphia prepare for that Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I thought that he was going to be their DC after the season to replace Jonathan Gannon. But I guess he just wanted to go to South Florida where the weather was warm and whatnot. Him coming to Philadelphia was one of the biggest offseason additions, not just when it comes to players, but just overall in the NFL, because I think that this defense is going to play at the top 10 level with Vic Fangio calling plays. I expect for the Philadelphia Eagles to have a bounce-back year, and I expect them to be in that Super Bowl discussion come January when we get into the playoffs and we start discussing teams who have the ability to win it all. The talent is there for Philadelphia. You improve this coaching staff. As long as Jalen Hurts bounces back and Nick Sirianni doesn't make any stupid decisions as a coach, Philadelphia definitely is good enough to win it all this season.